Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com. Hey everybody, welcome to our Week 5 follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
And first we're going to start with how did we do? I had a rough week. I lost a couple games. One was to the high scorer in the newest league that I'm in,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one is in the league that I've been in for forever.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing is I'm still tied for first in my division in the one and in first in the other.
Yeah.
And then I tied for first in the third one, which is our Dynasty League, and I happened to play you this past week,
Mm-hmm.
and beat you okay.
Yeah, 30 point victory, so...
Yeah, my big problem was I sat some guy by the name of Zach Moss.
I feel like a lot of people did, unless they had no other option than to start Zach Moss. So
yeah, it's that was, it's funny that you rush. I mean, if you looked at the stats of the LA Rams game,
mm-hmm.
like the first drive, 6 passes or so to Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you've got JT coming back, and he had, 4 or 5 touches maybe?
Something like that, yeah. I mean, gave him all that money, too. He got his contract he wanted. So, yeah, kind of... I mean, Zach Moss has been playing very well.
He has.
He's had some monster stat lines, and especially, that was a weird game, too, against Tennessee, who's one of the best run or rush defenses, you throw against Tennessee, is what you're supposed to do,
right.
When Zach Moss comes out and he's ripping big touchdowns and, over 200 yards, total, I think.
No, 195.
Oh, so close.
Yep.
But yeah, so almost 200 yards, from scrimmage. He's been playing really good, so it could be for maybe the next 2 weeks more of a 50-50, trying to get JT back into it.
Right.
I mean, he, held out and, then with the ankle, I think, and then something popped up with, his back that came out that he said was not true, and all the weird contract stuff. So, I mean, he's, a little out of practice. Yeah. That guy's something else, but, yeah.
Yeah, we aren't going to pay him.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what's $14 million?
Yeah, so... But, so that was, Zach Moss, I think he burned a lot of people.
Yeah.
Or if you had to play him, you were very happy. So,
Yep.
I won in one league with Nick, and then lost to Oz, and then lost by 12 or something like that in our redraft league. So that one was... a little disappointing. I was in 8th place, and I didn't go up or down, obviously. I stayed in 8th, so, 2 and 3 got, it was nice having Burrow actually show up, this past week.
Yeah.
It was good to see that. And he looked good, too, running around in the pocket and scrambling, so hopefully good things to come. He's got a couple tougher matchups in the next couple weeks, but, so...
Yeah, imagine what they would have done with
Higgins in there.
Higgins.
Yeah, well, there's some whispers, some stuff hearing about them moving to Higgins potentially, which that's kind of tough. Like we talked about, you kind of feel with what we were talking about with Burrow and the injury. Feels like that window for the Bengals was closing.
Right.
So. If there's still an opportunity and you got T. Higgins, I mean, I would keep him as long as you can. I don't know where he's at in his contract and stuff like that, but, that'd be an interesting thing to see. I think I have a feeling there's going to be some pretty interesting and maybe even some big names getting moved. There's a lot of talk about Denver just tearing it down to the studs. I was just telling Oz, I saw Van Jefferson just got traded to Atlanta, which Desmond Ridder actually looked like a good quarterback this past week too. So, yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting things coming up.
Kyle Pitts came alive for everyone who owns him.
Yeah.
If they actually,
I think he was on the waiver wire, and
I was going to say if anyone had the nuts to play him.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to our injuries, starting with James Conner. He injured his knee. It's going to be a couple weeks or so that he could be out.
Potential IR. I think they're talking to.
Okay.
So.
And so you want to look at Amaro
DeMarcado.
Yep. As the replacement for him. I think they have another guy.
Yeah, the Keontae Ingram,
Yeah.
I think, and he's been in and out practicing, not practicing with a neck injury.
Okay.
I mean, I think DeMarcado was an undrafted running back, but he looked pretty good when he came in. So I think he's going to be the guy. I think they know Ingram's not the guy to come in and replace James Conner. So, if you're going to target anybody, that'd be the guy.
Yep. Tank Dell, he had a concussion in the protocol. He's a decent receiver, but he's not, big enough to warrant finding a replacement necessarily.
Yeah.
Khalil Herbert, ankle injury, out multiple weeks is what I've heard.
Yep.
Deonta Foreman would be the replacement there.
Yeah, I just actually on the way over, like I was telling Oz, I picked up Deonta Foreman. I mean, you look back to, I think it was last season on Carolina, him and Chuba Hubbard were trading off big games.
Right.
Like multiple touchdown, 100-yard plus rushing games. Not saying he's going to do that because, granted, the Bears' offense, came alive, whatever you want to say it, last week against the Commanders,
Well, they almost look like they've been alive for 2 weeks.
I know, but, we've also seen the inverse of that, and they can be very bad. But, they get Minnesota, who, a guy will... Might as well talk about now. Obviously, Justin Jefferson. I'm sure everybody's heard now that he's going to IR.
Hamstring injury.
He also did not, during the game, there were some clips I've seen that I saw that he does not look happy right now in Minnesota. Like, he looks very frustrated and, Well,
I don't know how you'd be frustrated with... wasn't he leading the league in yardage?
Yeah, he's the
possibly
number one
in
receiver
receptions
and everything. But
so
losing games and,
yeah. Well, and the other thing is that I've heard that he is he's very attached to Kirk Cousins.
Mm-hmm.
So if Kirk were to get traded, I think he would want out.
Yeah.
If Kirk were to not get re-signed at the end of the season, I think he would possibly want out.
Yeah, which I think would be a good idea for him regardless, because you look at Minnesota, you look how bad their defense is because they have lost or traded or released all the pieces from it. The offense, you get Jordan Addison, like you said, kind of the target to take over for Justin Jefferson's role is KJ Osborne, who has had big games in the past as well.
Right, and that is who I mention here because I think that Addison has been seeing a lot more. He had touchdowns in week 1 and 2. Didn't he have one again this week?
Had this one this week.
So he's already become a decent part of that, and so I think KJ Osborne would be the answer there for potentially replacing Justin Jefferson for a little while.
Yeah.
Going back, we have Anthony Richardson. I have that he's out, possibly out weeks. AC joint. I heard it was 3rd degree. He was saying he's going to get a second opinion, so it's hard to say. But if he spends time either out or on IR, Gardner Minshew is a very capable backup quarterback.
Yeah, there's some teams out there in the league that need a better quarterback option that the fans are hauling. A lot. You hear a lot about Gardner Minshew,
right? Right.
But what sucks for Richardson is that he's so valuable for fantasy because he has that rushing upside as well. So now he had the concussion on the touchdown. Was that 2 weeks ago? where he fell back and hit his head, and then now again rushing. Just it didn't even look that bad. Like it wasn't like the Derek Carr against Green Bay when Rashawn Gary threw him, kind of threw him down.
Yep.
That one you were like, ooh, his collarbone probably just snapped.
Right.
This one was like pretty routine tackle, like kind of two guys. One guy kind of landed on him, and I think that's what got it, was just right at impact there. But it didn't look that bad. But yeah, the AC joint, especially if I don't remember if that's his throwing arm or not, but yeah, they had the shot of him walking to the locker room, kind of holding that arm up,
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
but yeah, Minshew's fine. Good backup. You're not afraid to throw the ball. So you're Pittman. I mean, Josh Downs has been pretty good too.
Right.
Rookie receiver.
Yep.
If he's still out there on the waiver wire, he's a guy that, especially with some of these bigger bye weeks coming up in the next couple of weeks, could be, worth stashing and being able to play and get you, double-digit fantasy points.
Yep. Next up, we have Mo Alley Cox. Concussion, he's in the protocol. Not a huge, there are so many tight ends out there that that's not
especially
huge.
tight ends that'll get you anywhere from 0 to 8 points on a given week.
Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all of them.
Yep.
Next up, Zay Jones, knee issue, unknown how long he might be out. Demario Douglas, head injury. He's a receiver for New England.
I didn't idea who that is, to be honest.
It said head.
Yep.
So if it's head, it may well be a concussion. If it's a concussion, he's in protocol. Juju Smith-Schuster, same thing, head, unknown.
Yeah, that's weird.
They didn't say concussion with either of those two.
Yeah, and obviously the name with Juju, New England has been horrible these last 2 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
Hearing too about it's time for Belichick to be done, like fire, him getting fired. Because I think he'd either have to die on the field or they'd have to fire him to get him out of New England as a coach. But
two of the worst. He's been outscored 70-something to 3 or something over the last 2 weeks.
That, yeah.
It's
Mac Jones looks horrible.
Right.
Zappy is fun to have him come in,
there's
because of the name, but he's, that offense is just, it's horrible right now. We talk about our buy low for Ramondre Stevenson, with the situation right now with how bad they've been, that's in my opinion, a pretty big risk to take right now.
It could be.
They have a great schedule upcoming for running backs, but with how bad they've been.
Yeah, but if the passing game is bad, you may have to run.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Daniel Jones. Tweaked. I don't know if I want to call it tweaked.
Yeah.
Seemed to injure his neck a little bit toward the end of the game. Once again, he was just getting crushed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that offensive line is... You could put a high school offensive line out there and you'd probably get the same result. That's how bad. And it's kind of funny seeing Evan Neal there. I don't know if he's a right or left tackle, but he's been pretty active on socials, talking some smack, and people are just destroying him because he is bad. There's a clip where there's a defensive end there, and you can tell by his stance, and he's rushed. It's a rush. He's coming in. He's not going to feather or anything or drop into coverage. He's going to get a sack. And Evan Neal takes one step towards him and then takes another step to the left and is trying to help out the guard, who his guy had gone into the A gap.
Okay. And
the DN just ran right past. Evan Neal didn't even look at him, didn't even throw a hand out, nothing. He's just been bad. So, the Daniel Jones, with him out, kind of hurts. Obviously, Darren Waller, I think, had a decent stat line this week, finally. So that obviously is going to hurt that a little bit, but other than that...
Yeah, I would be surprised, though, to see Daniel Jones miss much, if any, time.
Yeah.
He's a competitor. Mm-hmm. You see him out there. He's he rarely slides. He's going to go head first. He's going to try and get the yardage. I mean, he's a tough quarterback. Next up, we have Wan'Dale Robinson, concussion protocol. Not a big fan of their whole receiving corps. So
I mean, if he could stay healthy, I think he's probably the best one out of that group. But I mean, he missed the first couple weeks of the season, but
again, I mean,
he'll probably
you can't
miss this week because that's just the way it's been. I mean,
Right.
pretty much everybody who's had a concussion has missed at least 1 week this season so far. So
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to change.
It's interesting that it's a lot of that is you never see how good any of these guys are if the quarterback can't throw because of the offensive line. So next one, we've got the young stud Devon Achane, knee injury, out several weeks. Another one I'm guessing who could potentially go on IR.
Yeah, I think from what it sounds like they are going to put him on IR. Jeff Wilson is eligible to return. Obviously you got Mostert, who had a pretty, obviously Miami's just that offense is just insane. But he had a touchdown, had a nice week, so it's going to mostly be Mostert. Jeff Wilson, if he does come back, he'll mix in.
Savon Ahmed,
who was a healthy scratch this week,
Well,
actually.
well, yes,
but
but I
yes,
mean,
obviously he won't be. If Wilson's not ready to go, he will be. Playing.
Right.
But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of Mostert, a little bit of Ahmed if he's there, and yeah, like I said, that offense is just. They got a great matchup this week too. I forget who exactly they're playing.
Well,
but,
it can't be that great then.
Well, they play the Giants, but then they've got another one. It's not the Jets, is it? Something, I don't know. I targeted their defense just to have for these next couple of weeks because of the matchup. So it should be another rout by Miami.
Gotcha. So let's move on to our studs. No surprise here, DJ Moore. He was plus 34.19 points, and of course I was playing against him in one or two of my leagues.
Yeah, I have him in one of our. Not the dynasty I'm in with you, but the other one.
8 of 10, 230 yards and 3 touchdowns. It was interesting. I said to my buddy Phil that I'm watching the game and who pops up as the starting cornerback who's covering DJ Moore? St. Just.
I don't know.
He was drafted by the Packers or picked up by the Packers. We dropped him.
Yeah.
I think he may have been on the team for a year or two on the practice squad.
Okay.
And he's their starter.
The name does sound a little familiar, but
it's Saint Juste.
Yeah.
And he's he could not make the Packers, so you can tell that he's probably not one of the better defensive backs, and he was their starter. And he had DJ Moore. So, well, I shouldn't say he had DJ Moore. He was usually running after DJ Moore.
Yeah.
So, do we see DJ Moore continuing that? Gosh, I don't think so. Not to that level.
Obviously this was his best game of his career.
Right.
But, previous week too had a really nice, game as well against Denver. But
those are two bad defenses.
Exactly. Is that a matchup, or is that Fields is, starting to turn it around? Because he did the same thing last season where he was bad, but more of the rushing.
But he's throwing, right? He's throwing the ball now.
Throwing the ball.
But
he's been
bad defenses can make you look a lot better than. I'm not saying that he's not going to be decent. I'm just saying I would give it more time. Of course, I was playing against both Justin Fields and DJ Moore.
Yeah,
so,
that stack was. I've been seeing some screenshots on socials of guys who had Jamar Chase, DJ Moore, and like Zach Moss as well. Like there were some lineups out there that just absolutely went nuclear this week because of some basically because of this ETN. I played against ETN in the redraft league. That was frustrating, especially because it was against the Bills. But
So next up, we've got Zach Moss, plus 29 points. He was 2 of 2 receptions for 30 yards, and he rushed 23 times for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. And like we said, I don't think anyone saw this coming.
No.
we discussed it.
Against
So.
Tennessee, better run defense, and he explodes like that. I mean, again, like we said, he's just been playing really, really good lately. So.
But with JT coming back,
yeah,
that's not going to continue to happen for more than a week or so.
Yep.
I would say, unless something happens to JT. Jamar Chase plus 28.18, 15 of 19 reception, 19 targets, 15 catches, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Squeaky wheel.
Yeah.
There were some comments. A reporter asked him. I forget what the question was, but Jamar was like, "I'm always open. Look at the tape.
Oh yeah,
always open."
Yep.
So I think, like I said, plus Burrow came out of the previous week saying this is the best he had felt after a game,
and he still says he's not going to be 100% for a few more weeks.
Yeah, So I mean, that is something that kind of lingers, but I mean, like
it
Burrow
does.
too. He was moving around in the pockets. I mean, he picked up 10 yards for a first down, on a rush, and but yeah, with T. Higgins out, and then they even had Irwin.
Yeah,
I think
Irwin.
he had a pretty.
Yep.
I mean, he had a lot of catches, not a bunch of yardage, but
Right.
just
I
a
think he
lot
was
of-
in the 50s, 60s range for
which is normally
yards.
what you see when T. Higgins is out. That's normally what you see from Tyler Boyd.
Right,
So
right.
a lot of people picked up Tyler Boyd,
And then he
and
didn't
then
do
he
much.
didn't do much. So, but yeah, nice to see. Obviously, Jamar Chase is capable of this
Oh,
any week.
yeah, yep.
So it's
Well,
really
and-
nice seeing him back in the studs.
Yeah, he's capable mainly because he's got a quarterback that can throw the ball.
Yeah.
And as Burrow gets, better, not as in being a better player,
Yeah.
but better as in his injury, he's going to probably even be, better than he is right
Yeah.
now. So next up, Justin Fields, plus 20.86. He was 15 of 29 passing. Not great percentage. 282 yards and 4 touchdowns. Rushed 11 times for 57 yards. Again, I don't necessarily see him continuing this. I think that when they start playing better defenses, that will come back to reality. But I don't want to say that it's not a possibility.
Yeah, I think when we see them against all-around better defenses, I mean, he had 11 rushes, only 57 yards.
Right.
He's the kind of guy, all it takes is one of those to house, and then, if he doesn't throw 4 touchdowns, it all kind of evens out. I mean, yeah, 15 to 29, that's not great, but, when you have DJ Moore is, 230 of your 282,
Right.
Yards.
Yeah,
That's not going to happen every week.
That means you were throwing to other guys a lot too.
Yeah, I think Komet caught a touchdown. I think he had to fight his way into the end zone a little bit, but I think that's like 2 or 3 consecutive weeks for Komet. With a touchdown. So, yeah, again, matchup based. We'll see. They play Minnesota this week, who the defense isn't great, but it's definitely better than Denver. And sorry, who'd they play again this week? The Commanders, sorry.
Yeah.
So it could be that could be an interesting game, especially with Justin Jefferson out. Being out, that could be a very interesting game.
Yes, it could.
Vikings and Green Bay too, because we put up that stinker last night. But seems like Detroit's kind of running away with the NFC.
They are.
North.
They are. There's going to be a log jam at the bottom.
Yep.
So we move on to, I missed one. Travis Etienne,
Yep.
plus 20.8. 4 catches on 5 targets for 48 yards, 26 rushes, 136 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And what have I been saying week in and week out? How do you beat the Bills?
Yeah, you run on them.
Yeah. Horrible run
Matt
defense.
Milano, probably their best player
Out
on
for
that
the year.
defense. Well, then they lost Tre'Davious White last week to the Achilles.
Yep.
And then Matt Milano broke his leg.
Yep.
And then probably tore some other stuff too. But
Yep.
yeah, broke his leg, so he's out. So that's definitely
One of the
hurt.
better, linebackers in football.
Yep.
So
But ETN too, you watch that game and he's the kind of back where it's 5 rushes in a row for a total of 3 yards, and then he breaks like a 40-yard rush.
right.
And that's exactly what he was doing. He had like a 36-yard touchdown, had like a 20-something yard touchdown, for his 2, and then he's kind of a weird. Jacksonville is just kind of weird too because Lawrence hasn't been playing that great,
Right.
but they beat the Bills. Granted, I think part of that is Jacksonville has been in England or London for 2 weeks now.
Right. The Bills showed up like a day or two before.
Yeah, I mean you could see it in that first half.
Yeah.
They just looked obviously tired and flat,
jet lagged.
Yeah. So that was Etienne's. I mean, he's been pretty good so far.
Yeah.
A little up and down along with the team, but he's a guy that can just do this.
Right,
so.
right. I mean, I would expect him to be not plus 20 points over projected, but a solid back.
Yep.
Our duds, and again, same as last week.
All
5 quarterbacks. First one is Mac Jones, minus 14.44. He was 12 of 22 for 110 yards. 2 interceptions. He rushed it 1 time for 0 yards. Can we expect that from Mac Jones? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Mac Jones is not that good of a quarterback.
Yeah. And they're not doing much for the weapons around him either. I mean, you forget Devontae Parker's still there in New England, who at his time in Miami was a very good, he's a throw it up, let him catch it kind of receiver, but he would put up big stat lines in Miami. But, again, that's just because Mac Jones is not.
Right.
He's not it. I think he's going to end up being a backup here somewhere other than New England potentially.
Yeah.
Very soon, even. That offense, the team in general. I mean, their defense hasn't been a New England defense either.
Right.
I
mean, I drafted him in two leagues.
Yeah.
And I dropped him in one. I'm still holding out hope that they possibly turn it around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's hard when your offense is so horrible that your defense is on the field so much.
Yep.
You can't do well.
Yeah.
I mean, they still get their sacks and their interceptions, etc. But you'd like to see them score some more points.
Yeah. I mean, he's been benched 2 weeks in a row now. Because they're getting blown out for Bailey Zappi. Same thing happened last year. Of course, Belichick comes out and still says that Jones is the number one.
Well, of course he does.
So I think it's just going to be a lot of well-deserved for the Patriots fans. I think it's going to be quite a few years of a lot of pain and suffering here.
It may be. Next up, we have Anthony Richardson, minus 13.59, 9 of 12 passing, 98 yards, 2 rushes, 5 yards. Obviously, the injury played in here. I don't really expect this once he comes back.
Yeah.
It just depends on how long he's going to be out.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, I am not a guy who generally goes out and drafts a rushing quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Because, A, this can happen.
Yeah.
I mean, not the bad stats, but the injuries that come with being a running quarterback.
Yep.
It's why I stay away from Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson. I mean, I try and stay away from the guys that run Lamar Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
I try and stay away from those guys in redraft leagues. Now, I've got Lamar in my dynasty league, but until he, you have enough players to back it up.
Yeah.
In a redraft league where you're only carrying 1 or 2 quarterbacks, and you may or may not have the ability to just cycle through on the waiver wire in a 16-teamer or something, when one of your quarterbacks goes down, there may be no one out there. Yeah. I mean, I know that someone's going to hit Gardner Minshew this week.
Yeah. I mean, the thing what's been nice with Richardson is in redraft leagues, I don't think he got drafted, hardly at all.
Again, how big is the
late round flyer?
I've seen him listed pretty high. Yeah. Going in, he was pretty highly recommended by some.
I think people are just skeptical. Rookie, quarterback coming in, it was his rushing and not so much his passing coming out of Florida. And then. Everybody assumed at the time they said JT, so how much was that going to take away from Richardson running? So he's been kind of in. When he's healthy, somebody picks him up or they stash him on his bench. I think he's been a bench stash unless you needed him. I know in our redraft league that John, who is the Richardson manager, has Jalen Hurts. So probably not going to play Richardson ever. But
See, in ours, in our 16-teamer,
well, yes,
Anthony Richardson is a starter.
Yes, dynasty too, probably, either first quarterback up off the bench and or, if you're in a super flex dynasty, he's definitely a starter. Right. So, yeah, that makes sense. But, yeah.
Next up, we've got Jordan Love, minus 10.7, 16 of 30 passing, 182 yards and 3 interceptions. 2 rushes, 37 yards.
I mean, the rushing from the two rushes was nice.
Yeah.
But
Christian Watson came out and said that the interception in the back of the end zone right at the end of the game was his fault. It partially was because he did nothing to knock the ball down.
Well, he was also. So I was laying in bed watching it, getting ready to turn it off, and a little bit of push, but Love the pocket collapse right away. I mean, and they showed the angle of Watson, and the DB came in as soon as Love came out of the pocket. The DB came in, took a step or two in, and Watson would have been wide open, but Love hadn't looked up yet, so it was a little delayed. DB was able to play catch up, a little bit of push off, it was a touch underthrown.
Right.
As soon as Love let go of that,
it's interesting that he was able to catch up to Christian Watson.
I know. Well, there wasn't that much field left too. I mean, if this was if they were at the 50-yard line, I think that one was just tough. It was kind of off balance, moving, throw. As soon as he let go, I was like, that's underthrown and probably going to get picked.
I mean, here's my thought, is that, we've seen Daniel Jones perform poorly because of the offensive line.
Yep.
There were definite offensive line issues again for the Packers.
Yeah, well, I don't even think we've talked about it yet because we've been gone for a week, but Bakhtiari needing surgery again.
Yep. Out for the season.
Very expensive.
Roster holder,
bench decoration at this point.
Yeah,
so,
and he's going to cost a ton next year, regardless of whether or not the Packers keep him. So, am I worried about Love? I'm not. Did I? Everyone's like. Well, first of all, again, I've been watching the Packers for 56 years, and since I was about 3 years old, sitting there with my dad, watching the Packers every week. I've gone through horrible seasons. And not only horrible seasons, 5, 6, 8, 10 in a row. So everyone who's under 35 years old has no concept, because if you were 35, well, for the last 30 years, we've had top-notch quarterbacks. So you've never really been through down seasons. And while we're not playing really well, there's a lot of potential in these young guys. A lot of potential.
I think
potential.
I would like to see maybe a little more emotion out of Jordan Love. Because, I mean, he threw that pick and he's standing on the sideline. It seemed to me right away, he was just kind of like, well, I mean, granted, there's nothing you can do about it. But it was just, you can't
let him bother you, though.
I know, but it would just be nice to see a little bit more emotion out of him, to kind of, especially too, obviously, if it's a good play, have him run up and, but I know. I just think
I'm so tired of all of this.
I know. I'm not saying not like Baker Mayfield in Oklahoma grabbing his junk in the on the sideline, stuff like that. I'm not saying that, but just a little bit more like you make a bomb touchdown or something, run up there and chest bump, high five, do all that stuff.
Right.
Like sometimes he seems a little too calm and collected almost. I don't know. That's just kind of how I feel. But it's also a good attribute to have. I'm not saying it's bad, but it just would be nice to see a little more.
I hear you there.
Yeah.
I mean, I love the fact that he doesn't let that stuff bother him.
Yeah.
He stands up there, he looks at the defense, he sees what's going to happen, and if he makes a bad throw, he makes a bad throw.
Yeah.
He's going to learn.
Yeah, there are also some drop passes last night,
and some poor blocking.
Yeah, I think we got lucky that Devontae Adams, I mean, he's got the little bit of the shoulder, but he was quite a bit of a decoy. I mean, I keep seeing the one clip at one point, Joe Barry's defensive play call had Preston Smith lined up on Devontae Adams in the slot.
And that's the time he picked up 24 or something.
Yeah, so...
I don't... And then we had Lucas Van Ness in the wrong position on that slant in the end zone. And you know, there was... Well, he shouldn't be coaching on defense anyway. I just, you know, and Tyler Kraft, if you watched him... He was a pulling tight end, and he was supposed to pick up a guy coming in, completely whiffed, and I think that was Max Crosby, and Crosby tackles
the one guy you
back,
can't miss on.
Right, tackles the back in the backfield, and you just sit there and you go, you know, and Max Crosby, I mean, it's not like he's a little guy.
Yeah.
Max Crosby is huge, so make the block.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Dak Prescott, minus 9.99 points. He was 14 of 24, 153 yards, a TD, 3 interceptions, 1 rush, 2 yards. He looked horrible.
Yeah, CeeDee Lamb's come out and criticized the offense, says that they don't really have an identity, which I think is probably a little bit of an indictment on McCarthy. You know, I mean, obviously as Packer fans, we know what McCarthy likes to do, you know, but
not a fan.
Yeah, so I mean, Dallas's defense started the season amazing. You know, I mean, granted, playing some pretty soft matchups and that. I think that's more of a for me. I think San Francisco is going to be in the Super Bowl. They look good. They're fired. Brock Purdy's playing out of his mind. He's really good.
I think it depends, though. I mean, they are hitting on all cylinders right now. And Philadelphia, not so much.
Yep.
Philadelphia keeps winning their games.
Yeah. And that's what
right. Some of them they probably don't deserve to win, but they're winning those games. So it just depends on who's hotter at the end of the season. I mean, there's a movie about it. Any given Sunday? Yep. I mean, anybody can beat anybody, like we've seen. It's more a question of who is hot at the right time going into, you know, that point of time. It's interesting that you mentioned San Francisco, you know, Dak playing against San Francisco because Kittle. Yeah. You mentioned Kittle is a feast or famine guy.
Yeah, he feasted on his 3 targets. I think it was 3 targets, 3 catches.
Something like that.
Like 4 targets, 3 catches, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah. Obviously, as a CMC owner in all 3 of my leagues, I didn't like it at all, but...
he got a touchdown.
Yeah.
But yeah. I mean, yeah, Dallas, it is kind of weird because they got, you know, a guy in Tony Pollard who, you know, is very explosive, can you know, be a game changer. You got CeeDee Lamb, who's one of the, you know, top 8 receivers in the NFL. Well, I think there's just some weird stuff, like, you know, like CeeDee Lamb coming out and saying stuff. There's some weird stuff going on. They don't really know who they are on the offensive side of the ball, and which is interesting because I mean they were 3-1 going into the game, so it's not like they're horrible. Yeah, I mean they got a lot of talent on the roster. I mean they're you know if they can figure out what's going on. I mean, you know I think they were probably one of the favorites, obviously, coming out of the NFC. So, you know, them and San Francisco were probably the 2 teams. So, Yeah.
So next up we have Lamar Jackson, minus 9.89. He was 22 of, is that 38? An 8? Yeah, of 38, 246 yards and an interception, 6 rushes, 45 yards. They didn't look good.
Nope. They did not.
They lost a game that they never should have lost. Is Lamar going to stay there? I don't think so.
Yeah, it feels... I mean, Lamar hasn't been in the league that long, but it feels like he's been in the league forever. I don't know why. There's just some guys that feel that. You know, they kind of feel that way.
Yep.
But yeah, it is weird in Baltimore, too, because, you know, they got a fairly talented roster. I mean, granted, you lose J.K. Dobbins again this season, and, you know, you got old OBJ out there. Their receiving core is
Suspect.
Yeah, I mean, Rashad Bateman dropped a touchdown, so Lamar should have had, a touchdown.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
it's
just weird.
And Andrews seemed to disappear for the most part this week.
He had okay. I mean, I think in our PPR league, he had like 12.5 points.
Okay.
But but again, too, you go off the 2 touchdown game last week,
Right,
or the previous week against the Browns, to this, and it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, the Steelers defense, T.J. Watt's an animal. I mean, the Steelers defense is what is winning the Steelers, games.
Right.
Yeah. The
You mean
Ravens
it's
are
not
so hot and cold.
It's not Pickett
just,
to Pickens.
Yeah, I mean that's what they should do, and they need to.
They did it once.
I know they need to either make Najee the number 2 running back or trade him, because Jalen Warren looks so much better than Najee, but they just Matt Canada needs to go. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out of the organization, and from the fans and even some of the players. That big touchdown from Pickett to Pickens. There's a shot of the where all the offensive, like the coordinators, so Matt Canada's sitting there and all the guys like way up, in a booth.
Yep.
And everybody else except Matt Canada's like, yeah, cheering, and Matt Canada looked like he didn't know that was the play, so it
Maybe he
like
didn't. Maybe he didn't.
Kenny Pickett had audibled and it wasn't what he wanted. I don't know. So, but yeah, Baltimore's just really hot and cold. I mean, I think they're a matchup-based team as well.
Right.
You get a tougher defense and they just seem to sputter and they're not as explosive as they should be. And, I mean, Lamar's, 45 yards is all right, but, especially with the lack of running backs on the team, you figure you would like to see some more rushing out of Lamar.
Right.
So.
Right. So we moved to the waiver wire, and we already talked a little bit about Amaro DiMercato.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about Gardner Minshew.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I like is Thielen, Adam Thielen.
Yeah, I think after this week, he's not going to be available on many waiver wires. I mean, he probably might. I mean, I know in like I said, in our redraft league, he's been picked up and dropped a couple times coming into the season even. And now he's on a roster and he's in a starting lineup. And he's been...
I've been starting him for, I think, 3 of the weeks.
Yeah, I mean, he's...
Or maybe 4.
Veteran receiver. They don't have anything else really worth looking at for a receiving option there. So Bryce Young just hyper targets him. And,
right.
I mean, he put up a really nice stat line this week.
So if he's available, I'd say go get him.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, I have Sam Howell. Sam Howell is, when he goes up against really, really good defenses, he struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Although, they played against, they played against the Bears.
Yep.
So he looked really good. But he's
decent. Didn't they play the Eagles recently?
Yeah.
And he actually looked pretty good.
Yeah.
So I think if you waiver wire. Like I said, some buys coming up. If you need a good streaming option, I almost picked up Sam Howell and started him in place of Joe Burrow this week, just because of
and you would have ended up
with
with probably about the same or maybe a little bit more out of.
It was about the same.
Yeah.
But so
I it's funny because playing against you, I had the choice of I suppose I could have played Gardner Minshew or C.J. Stroud, but I had, Lamar in, and I had the choice of either Daniel Jones or Sam Howell.
Yeah.
And I went Howell.
Yeah.
And I also went Logan Thomas. And
it was a pretty good stack.
that worked out really, really well for me. I had,
I'll throw
50, 60 points in.
Yeah, I'll throw Logan Thomas in the waiver wire as well.
Right.
He's just older guy. He's been the same thing, kind of been in the league for a while, but Sam Howell throws a lot of footballs this way.
Yep.
And he's still got some juice, and he's been, when he's healthy in there, he's actually, I would pick him up, especially if you got like Travis Kelce, who might, who he with that ankle that he had,
I didn't want to list him because he played after that and caught the touchdown
so
it depends on what happened after the fact with it. If it caused him more problems.
Yeah, swelled up and it's stiff now. So
Yep.
But yeah, like I said, I'd throw Logan Thomas in there.
Yep. I wouldn't disagree with you. Gosh, I was thinking. The backup running back, and I'm drawing a blank on the Mason.
Jordan Mason.
For
the 49ers.
Yeah.
If they're stopping a team, yeah.
Well, and I was surprised that I don't think I saw Elijah Mitchell play.
I don't know if he was.
I don't know if he was a scratch or not.
Up. I mean, you know.
Well, he's been in.
Yeah.
He's been that first guy, but then last week I saw Mason, and this week there was a lot of Mason.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were, beating the.
Well, yeah, but even early on, he had some nice runs.
Mm-hmm.
So he might be someone that you go get. He might be, and I don't know. I don't know the situation with Elijah Mitchell yet, but he may be a handcuff with CMC.
If you're in a real tight pinch, they're playing the Browns this week, and Deshaun Watson is day-to-day, even though he was medically cleared last week to play and chose to sit out, and we saw the result with Dorian Thompson Robinson or whatever. He looked horrible. I mean, he was a rookie quarterback thrown in at the last minute, but if Watson sits, if you're in a real pinch, they might get up big early, and
Mason might see a lot.
Yeah, so
agreed.
Could be. I mean, that
I'm hoping not. I'm hoping it's a close game but high scoring.
Yeah, I throw out DFS dart throws. He might be somebody super cheap DFS that could have a stat line like he did this week.
Yeah.
And nice cheap option that affords you some of these, like a Tyreek Hill and stuff like that. So,
So my sell highs, Zach Moss. Did we have him on there last week?
I don't remember if we did or not.
I thought we did because we knew JT would possibly be back. It's one of those, if you can get something big for him, I would do it in a minute, because I don't foresee once JT comes back fully that Zach Moss is going to get the number of looks that one needs him to get.
Yeah, I would market that one as it's gonna. I'd say maybe like 2 weeks where it might be 50-50 with those two, and you go and target that team that just lost, say that's a team that lost J.K. Dobbins early and then now just lost Achane for a couple of weeks. You go and look at a team like that absolutely needs some running back help, and you take advantage.
Right? Yeah. That's what this game's all about.
Yep.
My second sell high is Justin Fields.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I don't foresee. I mean, he's had 2 really, really good weeks. I don't foresee him doing this week in, week out. I mean, we talked about how he played against some terrible defenses. If you can get something good for him, I'd take it.
Yeah, I think he could. I mean, there's some teams out there that are rolling with, potentially rolling with a Gardner Minshew. Maybe not in redraft because you don't roster that many quarterbacks, but definitely like a, maybe not even dynasty, because he could hold if he gets. There's some rumors about Chicago tearing it down as well to the studs, which could, there's been a little bit from what I've been hearing about Justin and Atlanta. Potentially in Atlanta sending Desmond Ridder over, but yeah, I mean, and then plus picks obviously,
right?
But,
and they're looking for if they're going Caleb Williams,
yeah,
Williams. Who I know someone else named Williams.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, no, I agree. Fields, but it's going to be tough too. If you're somebody that's going to try and trade for him, trying to pry him away from somebody at this point, it is gonna, that's why he's a sell high. It's gonna cost you.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah. Buy low. I like Jonathan Taylor still. I mean, you can say, well, he missed 4 weeks. Well, I mean, he played this week and he didn't do anything. I'm not saying you're going to be able to get him, but
so he's probably on a roster that he's been sitting in IR, and they've been waiting for JT to come back. So.
But if they played him, they may, you could easily be 0-5.
Yeah.
And you could be saying, I got to do something now. And
Gotta
JT
shake it
isn't
up.
anything potentially for the next, nothing big for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
The other is, and we talked a little bit about it, Ramondre Stevenson. You kind of don't like him, and I don't like him either.
Yeah.
But the weeks that he could have, this is a guy who, we saw it last year. He was a stud.
Yeah.
Especially I think in the second half of the season.
Yeah, he really came on, and like I said, this next chunk of weeks they have are plus matchups. The thing with Stevenson is rushing is like, okay, it's okay, but he was catching a lot of passes as well, which obviously you
In
got
a
Mac
PPR.
Jones, only completing 12 passes out
passes.
of 22 attempts. That is why Stevenson has been fantasy wise bad for a couple weeks now. So.
I think it's pretty much the whole season.
Well, yeah.
Except for the first week.
Yeah. And they basically split him and Zeke this week with carries and opportunity.
Yeah.
Him and Zeke were about even.
Yep. Although he saw the field more.
Well, yes, but yeah. So that's like I said. I think he's just risky, even aside from the matchups, just because of how bad that offense has been so far.
Now, the thing I like is that if you can get him on a buy low, you might be able to sell him high in 3 weeks.
True.
So it's one of those, if you can get him for nothing, and I'm sure there are, he was my second round draft in our
he was
16 teamer.
Yeah, he was going in the top 3 rounds of every single draft. Into second round.
Yeah, granted, I took him 32nd, so
still, end of round 2, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if you can, you might want to consider it. Next up is the loser of the week. And it's interesting that both of these people played the same person, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs. He was a scratch.
Yeah.
He was listed as out going into the game, and the funny thing is that the commission, our 32-year, the league that I've been in for 32 years, was the one who played him. Now, the problem is that he could have played, I think he has Gibson.
Okay.
And Gibson played on Thursday night.
Yeah.
Got like 5-6 points, not horrible.
All receiving, though.
But,
no rush yards. He had 4 catches for 40-something yards or something.
Well, no, it would have been
Or
for 50 or 60.
Yeah, 64, yeah.
So at least it would have gotten him some points, not knowing with Jahmyr Gibbs. And the way they've not been utilizing Jahmyr Gibbs, I might have done that ahead of time. It didn't impact the game at all because he lost either way. But the same person who played Akers 2 weeks in a row, when he was not on
scratch and traded,
played Jahmyr Gibbs also. Nice. Now, she actually won, surprisingly. But, you
really
two
grinds your gears.
You two, my friends, are our loser of the week.
Yep.
That's all we've got for today. Friday night, we'll talk about the Thursday night game and give you our picks of the week, etc.
Yep.
And we'll have the Love 'em, Flip 'em, Leave 'em segment. Until then, I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a great one.
See ya.